He slapped her so hard, the sound echoed across the parking lot. 43 people saw it happen. 43 people looked away. But 3 men in leather jackets didn't move. They just watched. And when the man in the suit finally noticed them, he realized he had made the worst mistake of his life. If this story touches your heart, please leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your engagement helps us bring more powerful stories to your screen. The slap echoed like a gunshot. Melissa Turner's head snapped to the side, her brown hair whipping across her face, her body stumbling against the hood of a silver Mercedes. The parking lot of Big Earl's Bar and Grill fell silent. 43 people witnessed that moment. 43 people suddenly found something fascinating on their phones, their shoes, the night sky. Nobody moved, nobody spoke, nobody dared. Because the man who had just struck her was District Attorney Bradley Weston, the most powerful man in Ridgemont, Tennessee, the man who decided who went to prison and who walked free, the man whose family had owned this town for 4 generations. "I told you," Bradley hissed, grabbing Melissa's arm hard enough to leave bruises, "never to embarrass me in public. Do you understand? Never." Melissa was crying silently, her hand pressed to her burning cheek. She was 24 years old, a waitress at the diner downtown, and she had been dating Bradley for 8 months. 8 months of promises, 8 months of lies, 8 months of escalating violence hidden behind closed doors. But tonight, he had finally shown his true face to the world, and the world was looking away. "Please," Melissa whispered. "Bradley, you're hurting me. People are watching." "Nobody's watching," Bradley smiled coldly. "Nobody ever watches. That's the beautiful thing about this town. They know who I am. They know what happens to people who get in my way." He was right. The crowd was dispersing, couples walking quickly to their cars, families ushering children away. Even the bartender who had stepped outside was suddenly very busy with his phone. Nobody would help. Nobody ever helped. But Bradley Weston had made a critical error. In his arrogance, in his certainty that he was untouchable, he had failed to notice the 3 motorcycles parked in the shadows at the far end of the lot. And he had failed to notice the 3 men sitting motionless on those bikes, watching everything. Diesel Morrison was 56 years old. He had served 2 tours in Vietnam, spent 5 years in San Quentin for assault, and had been a patched member of the Hells Angels for 31 years. His face was weathered leather, his beard was grey and wild, and his eyes had seen enough violence to fill 100 lifetimes. He had also buried a sister who died at the hands of an abusive husband, beaten to death while neighbors pretended not to hear her screams. Diesel had sworn on her grave that he would never look away again. "You seeing this?" muttered Chains, the youngest of the 3 at 42. His real name was David, but the silver chains he wore around his neck and wrists had earned him his road name. "I'm seeing it," Diesel replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do we do?" asked the 3rd man, a mountain of muscle named Bear. At 6'5" and 300 pounds, Bear looked like he could tear a man in half. But his voice was surprisingly gentle. "If we step in, this could get ugly. That's Bradley Weston. His family owns half the police department." Diesel watched as Bradley shoved Melissa against the car again. The girl was sobbing now, begging him to stop, and still nobody moved to help her. "Ugly is a woman getting beaten in public while a whole town watches," Diesel said. "That's ugly. What we're about to do is called justice." He swung off his motorcycle and began walking toward the Mercedes. Chains and Bear fell in behind him. They did not run. They did not shout. They moved with the slow, deliberate pace of men who had all the time in the world, and that was somehow more terrifying than any charge. Bradley noticed them when they were 20 feet away. His hand was still wrapped around Melissa's arm, but his confident sneer flickered for just a moment. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" he asked, putting on his courtroom voice. "This is a private conversation." Diesel stopped 10 feet from the Mercedes. Chains moved to the left. Bear moved to the right. A triangle of leather and denim, and barely contained fury. "Let her go," Diesel said quietly. Bradley laughed. It was the laugh of a man who had never faced real consequences in his entire privileged life. "Excuse me? Do you know who I am?" "I know exactly who you are. You're a man who hits women. Now let her go." The parking lot had gone completely still. The people who had been rushing to their cars had stopped. They were watching now, sensing that something had shifted. The rules had changed. Bradley's face flushed red. "I'm the district attorney of this county, and you're threatening a public official. That's a felony. I'll have you arrested. I'll have your little club shut down. You'll what?" Diesel took one step closer, just one. But it was enough to make Bradley flinch. "Call the cops? Go ahead, please. Call them. Let them come and see the bruises on her face. Let them take statements from all these witnesses who watched you assault her. Let them put you in handcuffs in front of the whole town." Bradley's grip on Melissa's arm loosened slightly. She was staring at Diesel with something like hope in her tear-filled eyes. "This is none of your business," Bradley said, but his voice had lost its authority. "You made it my business when you put your hands on her." Diesel's voice was calm, almost gentle. "Now I'm going to give you one chance. One. Walk away. Get in your pretty car. Drive home. And pray that I never see you touch another woman as long as you live." For a long moment nobody moved. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Then Bradley made his decision. He shoved Melissa away from him so hard she fell to the ground. Then he straightened his tie, smoothed his jacket, and smiled his politician's smile. "You'll regret this," he said. "All of you. You have no idea what I can do." He got in his Mercedes and drove away, tires squealing. Diesel knelt beside Melissa, who was still on the ground, shaking. "You okay, sweetheart?" She looked up at him with mascara-streaked eyes. "Why did you help me? Nobody ever helps." "Because it was the right thing to do." Diesel offered his hand. "I'm Diesel. These are my brothers, Chains and Bear. What's your name?" "Melissa. Melissa Turner." "Okay, Melissa. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to sit with you until the police come. We're going to give them our statements. And we're going to make sure that man never hurts you again." Melissa shook her head, fresh tears falling. "You don't understand. He's the district attorney. He owns this town. The police work for him. Nobody will believe me. Nobody will help. He's done this before to other women, and nothing ever happens to him." Diesel's jaw tightened. "He's done this before?" "At least 3 times that I know of. Women who tried to press charges, cases that disappeared, witnesses who suddenly couldn't remember anything." Melissa's voice broke. "He told me once that he could kill me and no one would ever know. And I believed him." Diesel looked at Chains and Bear. Something passed between them. A silent agreement, a decision made without words. "Melissa," Diesel said, helping her to her feet, "I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" She looked at this strange, scarred biker who had appeared out of nowhere to save her. "Why should I?" "Because I made a promise once to never look away when a woman needed help, and I keep my promises." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a card. "This is the address of our clubhouse. It's safe there. Nobody gets in without our say-so. You're going to stay with us tonight. Tomorrow, we're going to figure out how to take this son of a bitch down." Melissa took the card with trembling hands. "He's too powerful. He has judges, cops, politicians. And we have something better," Diesel said. "We have the truth, and we have nothing to lose." Bear had pulled out his phone and was recording the scene. The empty parking lot, the watching crowd, the young woman with the handprint still visible on her cheek. "What are you doing?" Melissa asked. "Gathering evidence," Bear replied. "By tomorrow morning, the whole world is going to know what Bradley Weston did tonight. And all his power, all his connections, all his money won't be able to hide it." For the first time since the nightmare began, Melissa felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. But none of them knew that Bradley Weston was already making phone calls, calling in favors, preparing to destroy anyone who threatened his empire. And one of those calls was to a man who specialized in making problems disappear permanently. The Hells Angels clubhouse in Ridgemont was not what Melissa expected. She had imagined something dark and dangerous, filled with drugs and weapons and menacing men. Instead, she found a surprisingly clean building with a well-stocked kitchen, comfortable couches, and a group of people who treated her with more kindness than anyone had shown her in months. Maggie Morrison, Diesel's wife of 30 years, had taken one look at Melissa and immediately gone into mother mode. Within an hour, the young woman had a hot meal, a warm bath, and a guest room with a lock on the inside of the door. "In case you need to feel safe," Maggie had explained. "No one will bother you, but sometimes it helps to know you control the lock." Now it was past midnight, and Melissa sat in the clubhouse kitchen with Diesel, Chains, Bear, and 2 other members who had arrived earlier, a wiry man called Whiskey, and a surprisingly soft-spoken giant named Priest. "Tell us about the other women," Diesel said gently. "The ones he hurt before." Melissa wrapped her hands around a mug of coffee. "The first one I know about was 3 years ago. Her name was Jennifer. She was a secretary at the courthouse. They dated for 6 months. When she tried to leave, he beat her so badly she was hospitalized for a week." "What happened to the case?" "It never went to trial. Jennifer suddenly recanted her statement, said she fell down the stairs. A month later, she moved out of state. Nobody's heard from her since." Chains leaned forward. "You said 3 women. Who were the others?" "Amy Delgado, 2 years ago. She was a law student interning at his office. Same pattern. He was charming at first, then controlling, then violent. She tried to go to the police, but the report disappeared from the system. She dropped out of law school and moved back to California." "And the third?" Melissa's face crumpled. "Her name was Rachel Brooks. She was my friend. She dated Bradley about 18 months ago when she tried to leave him." She couldn't finish. The tears came too fast. Diesel waited patiently. Finally, Melissa continued. "They said it was suicide, pills, but I knew Rachel. She would never. She was planning to expose him. She had evidence, recordings, photos, everything. And then suddenly she was dead and all her evidence was gone." The room went silent. The bikers exchanged dark looks. "You think he killed her?" Diesel said quietly. "I know he killed her, or had her killed, but I could never prove it." Melissa looked up with haunted eyes. "That's why I stayed with him for so long. I was afraid. If I tried to leave, if I tried to fight back." "You thought you'd end up like Rachel?" Melissa nodded. Diesel stood up slowly. His face was carved from stone, but his eyes burned with a cold fire. "Chains, get me everything you can find on Rachel Brooks. Whiskey, I want you to track down Jennifer and Amy. Find out where they are, if they'll talk. Bear, that video you took tonight goes live at dawn. Every platform, every news station, everywhere. You're going to war with the most powerful man in the county," Priest observed. "He'll come at us with everything he's got. Let him." Diesel's voice was iron. "We've faced worse than some rich boy who beats women. This club was built on a code. We don't prey on the weak, we don't hurt the innocent, and we don't let bullies win." Melissa stood up, wiping her eyes. "I want to help. Rachel was my friend. I want to help take him down." Diesel studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "All right, but you need to understand something, Melissa. Once we start this, there's no going back. Bradley Weston is going to do everything in his power to destroy us, destroy you. Are you ready for that?" Melissa thought about Rachel, about the friend who had trusted the system and died for it, about the years of fear and silence and looking away. "I'm ready," she said. "What do you need me to do?" "First, tell me about the evidence Rachel had, everything you remember." Melissa took a deep breath. "She never told me where she kept it, but she mentioned something once, a safety deposit box in another town. She said she kept copies of everything there in case something happened to her. Do you know which bank, which town?" "No, but—" Melissa hesitated. "She had a sister, Claire. They were close. If Rachel told anyone where the box was, it would be Claire." Diesel smiled grimly. "Then we find Claire." At that moment, Maggie appeared in the doorway. Her face was pale. "Diesel, you need to see this. Someone's outside. A car's been parked across the street for the last hour, just sitting there watching." The room tensed. Diesel walked to the window and peered through the blinds. A black sedan, windows tinted, engine running. "They're already watching," Chain said. "That was fast." "Weston's scared," Diesel replied. "Scared men make mistakes." He turned to Bear. "Change of plans. That video goes live now, tonight, before he has a chance to spin this." Bear was already pulling out his laptop. "Give me 10 minutes." Diesel looked at Melissa. "This is it. Once that video goes up, the whole world will know what happened tonight. Your face will be everywhere. Your story will be everywhere. Are you sure?" Melissa looked at the black sedan outside, at the men watching from the shadows, at the world that had always told her to stay silent, stay small, stay invisible. "I'm sure," she said. "Let them watch. Let them all watch." 30 minutes later, the video was live. By dawn, it had been viewed 200,000 times. By noon, it was national news. And Bradley Weston's carefully constructed world began to crack. The first crack came at 8 in the morning. A reporter from Nashville called the district attorney's office asking for comment on the viral video showing Bradley Weston assaulting a young woman. The office issued a terse statement calling the video misleading and taken out of context. By 9, 3 more news outlets had picked up the story. By 10, it was trending on social media. By 11, protesters had gathered outside the Ridgemont courthouse with signs reading, "Believe women" and "Justice for Melissa." Bradley Weston watched the chaos unfold from his office window, his phone buzzing with panicked calls from political allies. He had weathered scandals before, but this was different. This was visual. This was undeniable. This was everywhere. "Sir?" His assistant appeared in the doorway, visibly nervous. "The mayor is on line 1. The governor's office called twice, and there are reporters outside the building." Bradley forced a smile. "Tell them all the same thing. This is a coordinated attack by a criminal motorcycle gang trying to extort a public official. The video has been doctored. The woman is unstable. I'll hold a press conference this afternoon to set the record straight." "Yes, sir." The assistant hesitated. "Sir, there's one more thing. A woman named Claire Brooks has been trying to reach you all morning. She says it's urgent." Bradley's blood went cold. Claire Brooks, Rachel's sister, the woman he had paid off and threatened into silence 18 months ago. "Tell her I'm unavailable. She says if you don't call her back, she's going to the press with everything." Bradley closed his eyes. The cracks were spreading, fast. Meanwhile, at the Hells Angels clubhouse, Melissa was watching the news coverage with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Her phone had been ringing non-stop. Friends, family, strangers who had seen the video and wanted to offer support, and one call that had changed everything. "Her name is Claire Brooks," Melissa told the assembled bikers. "Rachel's sister. She called me this morning. She's been waiting 18 months for someone to help her take Bradley down. She has everything, the safety deposit box, the evidence, all of it." "Where is she?" Diesel asked. "Memphis. She's been hiding there since Rachel died. Too afraid to come forward alone." "Then we bring her here. Chains, take whiskey and get to Memphis. Find Claire Brooks. Bring her and that evidence back here. Do not stop for anything." Chains nodded and grabbed his keys. Within minutes, 2 motorcycles were roaring down the highway toward Memphis. Bear looked up from his laptop. "Diesel, you need to see this. The video has 4 million views now, and look at the comments." The screen filled with messages from across the country. Women sharing their own stories, men vowing to support the cause, survivors of abuse thanking Melissa for her courage. But there were other comments too, threats, accusations, claims that the video was fake, that Melissa was a liar, that the Hells Angels were criminals trying to frame an innocent man. "Weston's people are flooding the comments with disinformation," Bear explained. "They're trying to muddy the waters." "Let them try," Diesel said. "Truth has a way of rising to the surface." His phone buzzed. "An unknown number," he answered. "Mr. Morrison," a smooth, professional voice. "My name is Victor Crane. I represent certain business interests in the Ridgemont area. I'm calling to offer you a deal." "I'm listening." The video comes down. The girl recants her story. Your club receives a very generous donation, say $500,000. Everyone walks away happy. Diesel laughed softly. You think this is about money? Everything is about money, Mr. Morrison. Name your price. My price is Bradley Weston in prison for what he did to those women, for what he did to Rachel Brooks. That's my price. Silence on the other end. Then, you're making a mistake, Mr. Weston has resources you cannot imagine, friends in high places, the capacity to make your lives very difficult. I've had difficult lives before. Bring it. Diesel hung up. The room was watching him. They offered money? Bear asked. $500,000, Priest whistled. That's a lot of zeros. Blood money, Diesel replied. Every dollar of it soaked in the tears of women he's destroyed. He looked around the room. They're scared enough to try bribery. That means we're winning. But even as he spoke, Bradley Weston was making another call. Not to a lawyer, not to a politician, to a man whose name was whispered in certain circles with fear. I need the problem handled, Bradley said. All of it. The girl, the bikers, and especially Claire Brooks. She knows too much. That's a significant undertaking, the voice replied. Multiple targets, high visibility. It will be expensive. Money is not an issue. Just make it go away. Consider it done. As Chains and Whiskey raced toward Memphis, they had no idea that someone else was already on the way. Someone who had no intention of letting Claire Brooks reach Ridgemont alive. The highway stretched dark and empty as Chains and Whiskey rode toward Memphis. They had been on the road for 3 hours, pushing their bikes hard, knowing that every minute mattered. Claire Brooks was waiting at a motel outside the city. She had agreed to meet them, to hand over the evidence that could destroy Bradley Weston forever. But she was terrified. 18 months of hiding had taught her that Weston's reach extended far beyond Ridgemont. They were 40 miles from Memphis when Whiskey noticed headlights in his mirror. We've got company, he said through the radio. Black SUV, been following us for the last 10 miles. Chains glanced back. The SUV was keeping its distance, but matching their speed exactly, too precise to be coincidence. Could be nothing, Chains replied. Let's test it. He accelerated suddenly, weaving between lanes. The SUV matched his movements perfectly. That's not nothing, Whiskey said grimly. What do? We lead them away from Claire. Split up at the next exit. You go to the motel. I'll keep our friends busy. Chains, just do it. Get Claire and that evidence. Get back to Ridgemont. I'll handle this. They hit the exit at 90 miles an hour. Whiskey peeled left toward Memphis. Chains went right toward the empty industrial district. The SUV followed Chains. He pushed his bike harder, flying through abandoned streets, past shuttered factories and rusting warehouses. The SUV stayed on him, closing the gap. Then the road ended. A chain-link fence blocked the path. Dead end. Chains skidded to a stop, his bike sideways, facing the approaching vehicle. The SUV stopped 50 feet away. 2 men stepped out. Professional. Armed. Mr. Morrison sent you, one of them asked, approaching slowly. That's unfortunate. We have no quarrel with the angels, just the woman. Chains stood his ground. The woman is under our protection. Then you've chosen the wrong side. The man raised his weapon. Last chance, walk away. Chains smiled. You first. The shot echoed through the empty streets, but it did not come from the SUV. The 2 men dropped, wounded, as a third motorcycle roared out of the darkness. Bear, massive and furious, had followed them from Ridgemont. Diesel's orders. Never send 2 when you can send 3, Bear said, pulling up beside Chains. You okay? Better now. Nuss. Chains looked at the groaning men on the ground. Think they'll talk? They'll talk. Everyone talks eventually. Back in Memphis, Whiskey found Claire Brooks in room 114 of a rundown motel. She was pale, thin, clutching a leather briefcase like her life depended on it, because it did. You're from the Hells Angels, she asked, her voice shaking. Yes, ma'am. Diesel sent us. We're here to take you somewhere safe. Claire's eyes filled with tears. I've been waiting so long. 18 months of hiding. 18 months of watching that monster walk free while my sister rots in the ground. It ends now, Whiskey said gently. You have the evidence? She held up the briefcase. Everything. Recordings, photos, financial documents showing he paid off witnesses. Rachel gathered it all before she died. She knew he would kill her. She wanted to make sure it meant something. Whiskey took the briefcase carefully. "It will, I promise you. Are you ready?" Claire looked around the shabby room that had been her prison. Then she nodded. "Let's finish this." By the time Claire Brooks arrived at the Ridgemont clubhouse, the story had exploded. The video of Bradley Weston slapping Melissa had now been viewed over 15 million times. News crews from across the country had descended on the small town. Former victims were coming forward, encouraged by Melissa's courage. And Bradley Weston was unraveling. His press conference had been a disaster. Sweating, stammering, he had claimed the video was manipulated, that Melissa was a troubled woman with a vendetta, that the Hells Angels were a criminal organization trying to extort him. But no one believed him anymore. Now, with Claire's evidence in hand, Diesel prepared to deliver the killing blow. "These recordings," Claire explained to the assembled group, "are phone conversations between Bradley and his fixer, a man named Victor Crane. They discuss payments to witnesses, intimidation tactics, and—" She paused, her voice breaking. "And the murder of my sister, Rachel. He ordered it. He paid for it. And he laughed about it afterward." The room erupted in angry murmurs. Melissa was crying silently. Even the hardened bikers looked shaken. "We take this to the FBI, Diesel said. "Local cops are compromised. State police might be too. But I have a contact at the federal level, someone who's been building a case against corruption in Tennessee for years. This evidence is exactly what he needs." "And if the FBI is compromised too?" Priest asked. "Then we release everything publicly, every recording, every document, every photograph. Let the court of public opinion deliver the verdict." Bear looked up from his phone. "Diesel, we have a problem. Weston just held another press conference. He's claiming that Claire Brooks is a mentally unstable woman who has been stalking him for years. He says the evidence is fabricated. And he's announced that he's filing charges against the Hells Angels for kidnapping, extortion, and assault." "He's desperate," Chain said, "throwing everything he can." "Desperate men are dangerous," Diesel replied. "He knows he's cornered. That makes him unpredictable." His phone rang. "Unknown number." He answered. "Mr. Morrison." It was Victor Crane again. "You've caused quite a stir. My client is most displeased. Your client is a murderer, and you're his accomplice." Such harsh words. "I'm calling to inform you that legal proceedings will begin tomorrow. You and your entire club will be named as defendants. By the time our lawyers are finished, you won't be able to afford a bicycle, much less a motorcycle." "Looking forward to it," Diesel smiled coldly. "By the way, Victor, you might want to check on your 2 employees, the ones you sent after Claire Brooks. They're having a very interesting conversation with some federal agents right now." Silence on the other end. Then the line went dead. Diesel turned to his brothers. "It's time. Claire, Melissa, are you ready to tell your stories to the world?" Both women nodded. "Then let's end this." The courtroom was packed. 2 months had passed since that night in the parking lot. 2 months of legal battles, media coverage, and relentless pressure. Bradley Weston had fought with every weapon at his disposal: lawyers, money, political connections, threats. But the truth had proven stronger than all of them. The federal case had grown far beyond Ridgemont. Victor Crane, facing life in prison, had turned state's evidence. He revealed a network of corruption that spanned 3 states, involving judges, politicians, and law enforcement officials who had protected abusers like Bradley Weston for decades. 12 officials had been arrested. 3 judges had resigned. The governor had called for a complete overhaul of the justice system. And today, Bradley Weston would finally face judgment. Melissa sat in the front row, flanked by Diesel and Claire. She wore the same dress she had worn that night, the night that had changed everything. A small act of defiance. The evidence presented was overwhelming. Rachel's recordings. The testimony of Jennifer and Amy, who had finally found the courage to speak. the two assassins who had confessed to multiple murders on Weston's orders. When Bradley Weston took the stand, he was a shadow of the arrogant man who had slapped Melissa in that parking lot. His expensive suit hung loose on his frame. His eyes were hollow. "Mr. Weston," the prosecutor said, "did you order the murder of Rachel Brooks?" Bradley looked at the jury, at the cameras, at the three Hell's Angels sitting in the gallery, their patches visible, their faces implacable. He had spent his whole life believing he was untouchable, that money and power could protect him from anything, that people like Diesel Morrison were beneath him. He had been wrong. "Yes," Bradley whispered, "I ordered it. I ordered all of it." The courtroom exploded. Reporters rushed for the exits. The judge banged his gavel, but above the chaos, one sound rose clear. Applause from the gallery, from the hallway, from the crowds gathered outside. Justice had finally come to Ridgemont. 3 weeks later, Bradley Weston was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Victor Crane received 40 years. The network they had built was dismantled piece by piece. On the day of the sentencing, Melissa stood outside the courthouse, surrounded by reporters. Diesel waited nearby on his motorcycle, ready to escort her to safety if needed. "Miss Turner, what would you say to other women in abusive relationships?" Melissa thought for a moment. "I would say that help can come from unexpected places, that the people society tells you to fear might be the ones who save you, and that your voice matters, even when the whole world tells you to stay silent." She walked to where Diesel waited. "Thank you for everything. You gave me my life back." Diesel shook his head. "You gave yourself your life back. We just made sure no one could take it from you again." Melissa looked at the three bikers who had become her protectors, her advocates, her friends. "What happens now?" "Now you live," Diesel said simply. "Free, unafraid. That's the only victory that matters." As they rode away from the courthouse, the spring sun warm on their faces, Melissa realized something she had never expected to feel again: peace. 1 year later, the Rachel Brooks Foundation opened its doors in Ridgemont. Funded by donations from across the country, it provided shelter, legal aid, and support for survivors of domestic violence. The founding board included Melissa Turner, Claire Brooks, and 3 unlikely members: Diesel Morrison, David Chains Williams, and the giant known only as Bear. Their motto, painted in bold letters above the entrance, read, "We see you, we believe you, we will not look away." 43 people had witnessed Bradley Weston strike Melissa Turner that night. 43 people had looked away, but 3 had not. And sometimes 3 is enough to change everything.